There are mornings that feel as though they were hand-delivered by the universe itself, wrapped in soft light and unhurried time, arriving precisely when you need them most. That Saturday in late September was one of them. I had known at the moment I opened my eyes and heard nothing, no alarm, no pinging work device, no voice on the other end of a call reminding me of something I had forgotten, just silence. And then, from down the hall, the bright and tuneless humming of my daughter waking up in a good mood. That was enough. That was everything. The sky outside was the kind of pale, washed blue that only exists in autumn, scrubbed clean, of summer's heaviness. Our neighborhood's maple trees had begun their slow, magnificent surrender to orange and gold, their leaves catching the early light like stained glass in a cathedral nobody had planned. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and just looked at it for a moment. I had been looking forward to this morning for days. Work had been brutal, 3 consecutive late nights, a report that had required 4 separate revisions at the demand of people who couldn't agree on what they wanted, and a boss who communicated exclusively through passive-aggressive emails that ended with the phrase, "just a thought." I had not slept well. I had not eaten particularly well either, but I had known, through all of it, that the weekend was coming, and that Saturday morning belonged to me and Lily. Lily had just turned 2 years and 4 months old. She was at that extraordinary age where everything in the world qualifies as a miracle. Dandelions, puddles, with a shimmer of motor oil on them, the sound a chip bag makes when you crinkle it, pigeons, her own reflection, clouch that looked like dogs. So worlds was still raw and new to her, and being near her was, in the most literal sense, restorative. A daily reminder that ordinary things had not yet exhausted their magic. But her single favorite thing in the entire known universe, the one that was absolutely guaranteed to produce shrieks of pure, undiluted, ear-splitting delight, was the baby swings at Maplewood Community Park. We had been coming to that park since she was 6 months old. I knew every crack in the sidewalk path, every squeaky hinge on the iron gate, every dog that the regulars walked through on weekend mornings. It was our place, our ritual, our particular pocket of peace inside a life that did not always offer enough of it. My husband Derek had stayed home that morning nursing a cold that had arrived, as colds always do, at the worst possible time. So it was just us, me and my girl, with her 2 lopsided pigtails, her yellow parka, and the tiny sneakers with a Velcro strap she had recently become obsessed with fastening herself. Regardless of how long it took, regardless of who was waiting, we had stood on the front porch for 4 full minutes that morning while she worked at those straps with the concentration of a surgeon. I did not rush her. We had nowhere to be. She ran that glorious wobbly full-body toddler sprint, where the momentum seems constantly on the verge of overtaking the legs the moment I unlatched the park gate. I barely kept pace with her, laughing as her little arms pumped and her pigtails bounced and she made a sound like pure intention, aimed straight at the swing set. She went directly, without hesitation, for the green bucket swing on the far left. That was always her swing. Not because the others were different, but because it was hers. Children operate on the same principle as cats, in that way, claiming things by proximity and repetition until ownership becomes a kind of fact. I had buckled her into that swing hundreds of times. I could do it in my sleep. The playground was moderately busy for a Saturday morning. 8 or 10 children scattered across the equipment, a few fathers pushing strollers along the perimeter path, a cluster of mothers near the bench by the water fountain, coffee cups in hand. Nobody I knew particularly well, but familiar faces from weeks of weekend visits, the kind of low-key, unspoken community that forms among parents of young children, built on nothing more than shared exhaustion and shared joy and the recognition that everyone here is doing the same impossible, beautiful, mundane thing. I waved to a woman I knew from Lily's library story time, and she gave me the nod, that particular nod that means yes. We are both here. We are both upright. We are doing fine. I got Lily into the swing, secured the little safety bar across her lap, and began to push. She liked slow, steady pushes, not dramatic arcs, just enough to feel the air moving against her face. And she would throw her head back, mouth open wide, feet kicking at the sky, and make that sound. I don't have a precise word for it. It's the sound a toddler makes when they are perfectly, completely, unconditionally happy, a sound that bypasses every layer of adult conditioning and lands directly in whatever part of you still knows how to feel things simply. I was hearing it that morning. I was in absolutely no hurry to be anywhere else. That's when I first noticed the woman. She had positioned herself near the park entrance, arms folded, wearing a pressed white polo shirt tucked into khaki slacks. Despite it being the weekend, despite it being a playground, she had a lanyard around her neck with a laminated card on it, and she was scanning the playground with the focused, unhurried intensity of someone conducting an inspection they had been authorized to conduct. I noticed her the way you notice, a slightly odd cloud aware of it, not concerned by it. Neighborhood watch? Volunteer? Maybe. Someone waiting for a grandchild? I turned back to Lily, who was now saying more. More? With the imperious confidence of someone who has never once been denied more, and I obliged her. I had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. None of us did. Her name, I would learn later from the HOA newsletter she apparently wrote, and distributed herself on a monthly basis, was Patricia Elaine Moore. She was a 14-year resident of Maplewood Estates, a position she appeared to regard as a form of seniority that conferred both expertise and jurisdiction. Her self-designated title was Community Standards Liaison, a role she had evidently created, named, and appointed herself to at some point in the recent past, complete with the laminated badge she wore whenever she ventured out to enforce things. In the weeks following what happened that morning, the neighborhood would simply call her Karen, a label she had, it turned out, accumulated across many previous incidents, in many other contexts. Long before she ever set eyes on my daughter, she crossed the playground toward the swing set with the kind of purposeful, measured stride that people use when they are approaching something they intend to correct. I noticed her coming, and still felt no particular alarm. The park was public, people walked through it, perhaps she was heading for the water fountain, or to speak to someone else entirely. I kept my eyes on Lily, who had shifted from more to a garbled, tuneless rendition of Wheels on the Bus that had somewhere in transit become something entirely new, a song with no known title and no fixed lyrics. Uniquely hers, performed with complete conviction. Excuse me, her voice was clipped and precise, carrying the particular weight of someone who had rehearsed authority for so long that they had stopped noticing it wasn't real. I turned. She was standing about 3 feet from me. Her lanyard swung gently. Her expression conveyed the deep, settled displeasure of a person who has found what they were looking for. "Is this child yours?" she asked, gesturing at Lily with the kind of single-pointed finger that people use to identify suspects. "Yes," I said. "She's my daughter." Something cold and automatic moved through me, that parental alarm that fires whenever someone refers to your child as a problem to be categorized. I kept my voice even. "Excuse too old for the bucket swings," Patricia announced. She produced a small laminated card separate from her badge, a second laminated card from the front pocket of her polo shirt, and extended it toward me as though it were a citation. Per HOA, Community Park Guidelines, Section 4, Paragraph 2B, bucket swings are designated for children under 24 months. Your child appears to be past that threshold. She looked at Lily with the expression of a building inspector who has located a code violation. I stared at her for a moment. Before responding, Lily was still swinging, still singing. She had not noticed any of this. "She's 2 years and 4 months old," I said. "She weighs 25 pounds. She is perfectly safe in this swing, and she has been using it since she was 6 months old." I kept my voice level and deliberate. I had been through enough difficult professional conversations to know that matching aggression rarely helps and almost always escalates. "We're fine here, thank you." "The guidelines are the guidelines," Patricia said, unmoved by any of this. She pointed across the playground toward to flat wooden bench swings with low back rails on the far side of the equipment area. "There are toddler bench swings over there. She can use those." I looked where she was pointing. Those swings were designed for children 5 and up, children with developed core strength and balance, children who did not still walk like baby deer on uncertain terrain. Putting Lily in one of them would have been genuinely unsafe. "Those are not appropriate for her," I said, more firmly this time. "She's still very small. She needs the support this swing provides." I turned back to Lily and slowed her to a gentle rock, putting my body slightly between them. "We're not moving. Thank you for your concern." There was a pause. I genuinely believed, in that pause, that it was over. I thought she would exhale sharply, say something about having done her duty, and walk away to compose a strongly worded message to whatever digital forum she used to conduct these greetings. I was wrong. In the single most shocking moment I have ever witnessed in a public space, Patricia Moorfield stepped forward, reached both hands out, gripped the front of the bucket swing with Lily in it, and yanked it to a dead stop. The force of it was enough to jerk Lily forward hard against the safety bar. Lily, who had been mid-song, mid-kick at the absolute peak of her happiness, let out a startled, frightened cry, the kind that has a different frequency than a cry of pain or a cry of frustration, the kind that means something has happened, that was not supposed to happen, and the world has briefly stopped making sense. The sound cut through the entire playground. Every adult froze. Every child froze. Even the sparrows in the overhead trees seemed to pause. For a long, surreal second, the only sound on that playground was my daughter crying. And every single person there had just seen Section 3, the aftermath, the playground, responds. For 1 terrible, suspended second, I could not move. Not because I was paralyzed by fear, exactly, but because my brain was refusing to process what my eyes had just sent it. The information did not fit any category of expected human behavior that I had ever encountered in a public space. Adults do not grab children's swings. Adults do not grab children's swings. The sentence kept repeating in my mind without finding a place to land. And then Lily's cries registered fully high, frightened, completely bewildered, and every other thing disappeared. I stepped between Patricia and the swing in a single movement. I unlatched Lily and lifted her out, pulling her against my chest and rubbing her back in long, slow strokes, feeling her tiny heart hammering against mine. She was not injured. I ran my hands over her immediately, checked her face, her arms, the way she moved. She was not hurt, but she was shaken with shock, her face crumpled and wet, her small fists twisting into my jacket like she was anchoring herself to something certain. She had no framework for what had just happened. She only knew that the best moment of her morning had been interrupted by something cold and sudden and wrong. Neither of us had a framework for it. "Do not," I said, and my voice came out very quiet and very flat in a way that surprised even me. "Touch my child again." Patricia had taken a half step backward. Something shifted in her expression for the first time, not remorse. Quite, but something in the vicinity of recalibration. Perhaps she had only just, in that moment, felt the full weight of what she had done, or perhaps she had simply registered, as I now did, that the playground had gone completely unnervingly silent around her, because it had. I looked up and realized that every adult on that playground was watching Patricia Moorfield, not with spectators' curiosity, with the fixed, deliberate attention of witnesses. The two mothers who had been chatting by the water fountain had both risen from the bench and taken steps toward us. A father near the slide, a large and unhurried man, had crossed his arms and was walking in our direction with slow, purposeful strides, the kind that communicate that he was in no hurry because he was certain he would arrive. The dad with the stroller near the gate had stopped moving entirely and had his phone in his hand. Nobody shouted, nobody made a dramatic announcement, but the circle had quietly, unmistakably, closed. "She grabbed that baby," the voice came from about 15 feet away, clear, steady, not raised. It belonged to a woman I would later know as Renata, who lived 3 streets over and had 4-year-old twin boys. She wasn't performing outrage. She was stating fact, the way you state facts when you want them to be on the record. I saw it. She physically grabbed that baby's swing. A murmur moved through the gathered parents, not loud, but unanimous, and unhesitating, the sound of a collective verdict arriving without deliberation. "I was simply enforcing park guidelines," Patricia began, and even the sound of her own official language in that silence seemed to land differently than she had intended, thin and procedural against the moral weight of what everyone had just seen. "The HOA has clearly established. You put your hands on a child?" the father with the crossed arms said. He was calm. He was, I noticed, approximately 6'3". He did not raise his voice either. "That is the only thing that happened." Here, Patricia looked at him, then at the faces arranged around her, and I watched something shift in her posture, a subtle but visible deflation, like a balloon that has found a slow leak. I had my phone out by then. Not to call anyone yet, just to document. I took 2 photographs of Patricia standing at the swing set, her lanyard still swinging, her second laminated card still in her hand. She saw me take them. She saw several other parents do the same, phones appearing quietly, without comment or theater, the way witnesses produce evidence when they understand that evidence will matter. Patricia looked around the playground with the expression of someone who has just discovered that the landscape she thought she controlled has been this entire time. Somebody else's ground. Renata walked over to me and put a gentle hand on my back. "Are you okay? Is she hurt?" Her voice was warm and direct. "She's scared," I said. "I don't think she's hurt." Lily was still crying softly into my shoulder, her face tucked against my neck, one small hand patting my cheek absently in the particular way she has of comforting herself by comforting me. "You saw it?" I said to Renata. Not quite a question. "We all saw it," she said, and the simplicity of that, the plainness, the totality of it, was the most reassuring thing anyone had said to me in a very long time. Patricia made one final attempt. She straightened her lanyard with both hands, drew herself up, and said with the last of her official conviction that she intended to file a park violation report, and that she retained every right to enforce community standards within Maplewood. The states nobody responded, not a single person. The silence that answered her was not hostile so much as simply final. The silence of people who have heard a claim and found it, unanimously, without merit. She stood in it for a moment. Then she walked away toward the park gate with short, stiff steps. Her laminated cards still clutched at her side, and she did not look back. Lily watched her go from over my shoulder, still sniffling, patting my cheek. I sat on the bench near the swing set for a long time, after Patricia Moorfield walked away. I wasn't ready to move. Renata sat beside me without being asked, the way good people do when they understand that presence is the thing required and not words. One of the other mothers, I didn't know her name then, though I do now, appeared at my elbow with a juice box for Lily, the kind with cartoon animals on it, apple juice, with the little bendy straw already inserted. Lily accepted it with the injured dignity of a small person who has been through an ordeal and understands that refreshment is the appropriate response. She stopped crying within 5 minutes. She was investigating a beetle on the edge of the bench slat before I had fully stopped shaking. Children are staggering that way. I called Derek. He answered on the second ring, and I told him what had happened, speaking slowly and in order, because I wanted to say it correctly, and also because the act of saying it aloud made it more real, and I needed it to be real before I could decide what to do about it. His voice moved through several distinct registers in about 30 seconds. Confusion. Then a long pause that was the sound of him understanding. Then a very controlled and very deliberate calm that I recognized as his professional mode. The one that meant he was already thinking several steps ahead. She grabbed the swing, he repeated, while Lily was in it. Yes, I said. There was another pause. Document everything, he said. Witnesses, photographs, times, names if you have them. I already started, I said. Good, he said. I'll call you in an hour. That afternoon I wrote out a full account of the incident at the kitchen table while Lily napped, organizing it by timestamp, noting the sequence of events, the exact words. I could recall the names of the witnesses I had collected before leaving the park. Renata had already messaged me through the Maplewood Estates neighborhood Facebook group, a group I had finally belatedly joined that afternoon on my phone with her own written account and the contact information of 2 other parents, who confirmed they had witnessed the entire incident. By the following morning, the Facebook post had 63 comments. Many of them were not the first complaint about Patricia Moorfield, not even close. People came forward with stories going back for years. She had confronted a young family for using a visitor parking spot during a birthday party. She had filed 3 noise complaints against a couple who hosted a book club on Friday evenings. A book club! It bears emphasizing. They concluded, before 9 o'clock and generated no discernible sound beyond conversation. She had demanded a neighbor remove a wind chime she found aesthetically objectionable, citing an HOA bylaw provision that, when the board checked, did not exist. She had taken issue with a teenager's bicycle on grounds that its color violated community aesthetic guidelines, which it also did not. There had been 2 prior incidents at the park specifically. One involving a grandfather whose granddaughter's stroller had extended slightly beyond the designated paved path, and one involving a dog who had been off-leash for approximately 30 seconds while its owner reattached the clasp. In both cases, Patricia had been aggressive, self-certain, and utterly convinced of her authority. We filed a formal complaint with the HOA board within 48 hours. It included my written account, 3 witness statements, the photographs, a timeline, and a request that the board address Patricia's conduct and issue a written public clarification that HOA volunteer liaisons hold no authority to physically intervene with residents or their minor children under any circumstance. Derek handled the formal language. He is a contracts attorney. Patricia Moorfield had, in choosing to grab my daughter's swing, managed to pick what was perhaps the single least strategically advantageous household in Maplewood Estates to target. The board meeting was held on a Wednesday evening. More people showed up than had attended any HOA meeting in recent memory. Parents from the park, neighbors who had their own encounters with Patricia, people who had heard about the incident and felt that showing up was the appropriate thing to do. Patricia was there, in the same pressed polo, with a 3-ring binder of printed HOA regulations organized with color-coded tabs. The board chair, a quiet, slightly exhausted man named Gerald who looked like someone who had been managing exactly this kind of situation for far longer than he had anticipated when he volunteered for the role. Read a prepared statement. It acknowledged that physical contact with a resident or resident's minor child was categorically outside the scope of any HOA volunteer position, that the board took the incident seriously, and that Patricia's Community Standards Liaison title and associated privileges were being suspended pending a full review. Patricia stood up. Gerald asked her, politely, but with complete finality, to sit down. She sat down. The outcome was not criminal charges. The incident, while genuinely appalling, occupied a difficult legal gray area, and what I wanted more than punishment was accountability and change. Patricia eventually resigned her position. The HOA rewrote its volunteer code of conduct to include explicit language around physical boundaries and the limits of volunteer authority. From what neighbors have told me since, Patricia's appearances at the park have become rare. Gerald, in a gesture I found unexpectedly moving, sent me a handwritten note on plain stationery, thanking me for bringing the matter forward and expressing regret on behalf of the community for what had happened to Lily. It was the kind of note that a tired, decent man writes when he means it. But the thing I think about most, the thing that actually matters, when I try to locate the center of the whole experience, is not Patricia Moorfield, and not the board meeting, and not the Facebook comments, or the formal complaint, or the code of conduct rewrite. What I think about is the playground going silent. I think about the way those parents rose from the bench without being asked. The way the father with the crossed arms walked toward us with slow, unhurried certainty. The way Renata put her hand on my back and said we were all here, in a tone that turned proximity into solidarity. The way nobody let a language shift the moral reality of what had actually happened. There are moments when ordinary people, tired, good, Unremarkable people who came to a park on a Saturday morning to push their children on the swings choose to be witnesses. Instead of bystanders, they don't perform heroism. They don't make speeches. They simply see what happened, say what happened, and stand close enough for it to mean something. That is not a small thing. In my experience of that morning, it was everything. Lily doesn't remember it. She used to. She has already forgotten Patricia Moorfield with the magnificent, efficient completeness of a mind not yet burdened by the weight of grievance. Last Saturday, we went back to Maplewood Community Park. She ran through the gate the moment I unlatched it, her little legs churning across the grass, her arms windmilling, going straight for the green bucket swing on the far left. Her spotters by the unchangeable fact of repetition and love. I buckled her in. She threw her head back, feet kicking at the autumn sky, and she made that sound, that perfect, wordless, irreplaceable sound of complete and total happiness, and I pushed her gently,